Hey, this is Matt Urtz, the Madison County historian. We are still working to document the COVID-19 pandemic. We have a very special guest today, Diana Wendell of the OCM and Oswego BOCES. Thank you for joining us, Diana.
My pleasure. Thanks, Matt.
So, would you mind explaining kind of what you do in the school districts you work with, kind of within Madison County specifically?
Sure. I actually, about a year ago, the Onondaga Cortland Madison BOCES school library system and the Oswego County BOCES school library systems, we merged. And so it's a partially state-funded program, and then the BOCES, we sell services to the districts, and so we get some money that way. So the main part of what I do is we coordinate workshops and conferences for school librarians and classroom teachers and administrators, and we help kind of curate and provide different types of online resources that teachers and school librarians can use with students to kind of help them do research, to help them find reading materials, and also help make learning as engaging as possible.
Okay. Talk a little bit about when COVID-19 first appeared on your radar and what the immediate response of your organization was.
Yeah, I was looking at the calendar to get my dates right. Yeah, I think it was like around second week in March. It started to really hit the news and everything. And I'm based at Onondaga Cortland Madison BOCES, and so it was decided that a portion of the staff was going to be allowed to work from home. And that was basically folks that were maybe older that might have health issues, or folks that had childcare issues. I was not in that group. I was working. And so we just sort of, it just seemed all right because a lot of what we do is email, calling people. So it really it wasn't really too much of a big problem. And luckily most of our staff has good internet at home. And so we were able to do that. And then I was just looking at my calendar, and then at the end of that week, which was Friday the 13th, there was actually, at one of our school districts in Cortland, there was a professional development day for teachers, and we were all wondering if we were going to go down there because the school districts were starting to realize that things were going to shut down. So all of a sudden, but that district wanted us to come, so a couple of us went down and did some workshops for teachers. And then I think it was the next week, all of a sudden, the schools were shutting down. And so it was kind of like, okay, everyone's going to work from home. Make sure you've got everything you need to do your job. And that was kind of.
Yeah, Friday the 13th, that evening, I think that's when, around then's when Madison County announced the next week we would go, I think the governor announced we'd be all half staff. And that night was when the first 2 or 3 school districts closed or announced their closings. And right. I think by Tuesday, a lot of them have said, well, we're going to have them come in Monday and hand them stuff. And
right.
That's when it kind of.
Right. We work with a couple of Madison County districts, and I think Madison actually started doing that earlier than Onondaga County. And we also, the BOCES coordinates with the county executives. So it's kind of like whatever the county executive decides, then we go along with that.
Yeah, because I know by the middle of the following week, we were informed that the county would be closing. The last day that it would be open was March 20th. And then we reopened, I think the week of Memorial Day. And a lot of us, myself included, are working kind of from home and from the office, depending on the day. And I think that probably will change a little with phase 4, but we'll see. So talk about, you don't deal with students specifically, but you're probably dealing with teachers who in the moment suddenly have to learn technology and how are they going to do this. So talk about what you were doing in that kind of crazy moment from we announced we're closing to I know a lot of places basically bumped their spring break to 2 weeks and said, well, we'll make this 2 weeks and then we'll come back. But right. it became very apparent very quickly that we weren't coming back for a little while.
Right.
So talk about helping teachers in that moment kind of figure out what they were doing? Because this was all done on the fly.
Right. Well, I mean, kind of the first thing I think we started doing is, I mean, we do a lot of workshops and we coordinate meetings. And so we started looking at our calendar and going, okay, what can we do using, Zoom or Google Meets and kind of translating that. My department doesn't work a lot with hardware. So I know the districts were all of a sudden trying to figure out how are they going to get kids computers, because it's not standardized at all across different districts in terms of how much one-to-one computers there is. I mean, it's something that's really been growing a lot in recent years. And then all of a sudden it was like, I know some districts were like, thank God, all the kids have Chromebooks, or thank God at least half of these kids. And then I know a lot of the districts where the tech directors were kind of, they started distributing Chromebooks to families. And that was something. One thing that we do, actually, we provide a little bit of, Wi-Fi boxes for the districts, but just on a very small basis. And so that was something where all of a sudden we were trying to see if we could order more of those for districts. And we were hearing from a lot of superintendents. The problem with that was those were never designed for kids to use for 7 hours a day. They were something that were just to sort of help supplement. And so like very quickly that kind of became apparent as an issue. And so some districts had the money to start either buying or leasing those, and we did kind of help with some of that. So that was kind of our beginning. I know like a lot of the teachers use something called Google Classroom, and I think that was something that really ramped up as quickly as possible. I know some of the districts were not, and were doing, creating packets. And so, we were actually also trying to make sure all the school librarians had a good handle on how they could access all the online resources so that they could share those out with the teachers and the students.
Okay. So we've hit this point. Schools have been canceled. I don't know that I would say people hit a groove, but they were able to function in the moment. Are you guys, today is June 18th? Are you guys now kind of shifting towards what fall might look like? And do you have any idea what that's going to entail?
We're kind of waiting for the governor to tell us, what kind of guidance is going to be provided in terms of whether schools are going to be allowed to go back in person, whether it's going to be, a blended model or an in-person model. So we're kind of in like a holding pattern. I mean, we're pretty much, as you said, we kind of got into our groove, and, we can really easily reach all the school librarians via email or phone if we have to, because like everybody transferred their phones to their cell phones. We're really kind of waiting to hear what kind of guidance comes from the state education department. I know actually they recently sent out, it's called the Digital Equity Survey. So the state education department is trying to get a handle on what it looks like across the whole state, because, as I said before, some districts were already one-to-one, some districts were not. There's obviously inequities in terms of, what types of internet access or devices that kids have at home. So that'll be interesting I don't know what their plans are. I know there's also hopes that maybe Spectrum and some of these other big companies will provide some more, internet access is just, it's a utility. It's like, everybody's got to have electricity. I mean, in this day and age, everyone's got to have internet access, and it can't just be, dial up. I mean, I know like some of our areas that are rural, even the hotspot boxes don't even work because they're hilly or they aren't close enough to a cell phone tower.
Yeah, I know where we are. That's been a big thing. They conducted a study over the last year about rural internet access, and they had a lot of meetings in different places because Madison County, especially, south of Route 20 and even south of Oneida, Chenango, Canastota is very rural. And just what you said, I think we talked to the Madison School District, and they talked about that. They figured about 5 to 10% just wasn't going to have internet access. It just wasn't plausible where they are. So what do you do for those, and how do you make that work? And
right. I mean, we hear things like, people driving to the school district and using the Wi-Fi in the parking lot or using the public libraries. Sometimes,
but they're closed now too. So
but their Wi-Fi was kept on, as far as I understand. Although some of them in your very small, really rural areas, they may only have almost like a home access type of Wi-Fi.
So you guys are just kind of stuck right now. You're not planning in terms of, here are the options we think could happen, we have to move forward with something? Or are you planning and I know you're a little different. I know we were working on a project for bringing teachers to historic places and kind of teaching on specific topics like abolitionism and that, and that's going to have to be adapted. So are you hoping that in the fall you can kind of reboot that again, or?
Yes.
Okay.
Because there were some things that sort of easily translated into like an hour Zoom. But I think, I know myself, I've participated in some conferences. There was an archives conference last week, and they turned a whole one-day conference into a virtual conference where they had different sessions, and then they would give people a break, and then you'd have time to go off and do lunch on your own. So I think that, the one thing that kind of we're really unsure about and unclear about is that if schools are back in session and they're, whatever that looks like, whether it's kids going part of the day or every other day, how are we going to reach teachers with professional development? Because actually it's been really wonderful, because I think teachers, classroom teachers, school librarians, their schedules have been a little bit flexible. So we've really had a tremendous amount of participation in webinars. But if teachers are back in session, what is that going to look like? I mean, our district's going to let them stay home for a half a day and participate in some professional development on their laptop at home, because they can't really do that in school. Because the other thing too is that we imagine that we're still going to be under a certain amount of, you can't have huge groups meeting together. So, we're thinking that, certain things would still have to be done remotely. And so that's, that's some of the things we're kind of trying to figure out.
I know that we talked to, in the last 2 weeks, to Cornell Cooperative Extension, and they talked about how they had a significant bump in attendance for their working with farmers. So they specifically cited utilizing drones in farming class, that they had far more, but their ag educator made the comment that she felt like in the future it was going to be a mix, where the one thing this has taught them is they can stream stuff live, they can do stuff live, but she said that there is a percentage of the group that wants to be there in person. And that might be what they do. It might be a situation where you go, okay, we have 20 spots open, we can safely socially distance, and the remainder, if you can't make it, we're going to stream this live. We'll have somebody monitoring it who will answer questions as we go along, or ask the presenters questions. And this is all curious to me. I'm doing my first digital presentation Monday, and we have a big couple of them in September. So I think that's one of those things that's going to come out of this, is we're going to see a lot of mixing of the two types of, in person and digitally.
I would say before that, people didn't want to participate in webinars. I mean, if people are teaching all day long, they, we experimented with all kinds of things, after school programs, evening webinars, Saturdays. People just didn't really want to do it. But, during this period, at least, we've seen a lot of participation. And actually, I think we've actually created some stronger kind of community learning, professional learning networks. Like we started doing a weekly Zoom for our school librarians where they could all come together. We could talk about things informally, and they really loved that. And I know at the BOCES, they've been doing that with all kinds of different groups of educators. So I think that that has really been a wonderful thing. And I think maybe people are sort of feeling like, well, this is good because I don't have to spend this time traveling. You know, I don't have to drive, you know, so-and-so. I mean, it just seems like a good use of time, you know, where people don't have to go somewhere. And
news reporters have said they look forward to the town meetings and the county meetings being done digitally because it allows them to attend and report on it. But in the middle of January, when it's -7 degrees, they don't have to try and drive to, you know, a small rural town to cover the story.
Right.
And that's stuff, you know, we haven't thought about in the past. And the other thing I think it's done is it's allowed people that maybe weren't as tech savvy to dip their toes in and get comfortable enough to do simple things.
Right.
So last question. Let's say they came out with a vaccine tomorrow and everybody's going back to school. What do you think the long-term implications of COVID will be on schools? Will we see more separation between students? Will we see more opportunity to do stuff from home? I mean, what, and this is obviously just hypothetical.
Well, I think it's really kind of pushed educators to finally realize that we have to have one-to-one computing, that there's no, it's, you know, we've been spending years and years with that. And two, like the use of ebooks, which, you know, people have, you know, they use it if they have to. I think perhaps that's going to continue to grow because, like, I mean, I know myself, like I had a book on hold at the library and it didn't even occur to me that they were going to be closed. And all of a sudden I was like, how do you mean I have books on hold? So even though, I mean, I've used audiobooks, especially if I travel, but so I actually finally finished my first ebook, just reading for pleasure. Cause I'm, you know, I'm a dinosaur, I'm not 20, you know, and I just like, I mean, I have kids in their late 20s and they also like paper too, but you know, I mean, I don't have the best device. I just do it on an iPad. You know, it's not like a Kindle where you can change that kind of stuff. So, you know, I'm hoping that there's going to be more, you know, use of good resources, you know, digitally, and I think more, you know, one-to-one computing, because you feel bad, you know, when you look at folks in poverty, they might only have a cell phone. That might be their only access to the internet, and so I think schools have to really, you know, get Chromebooks or something so that kids have it, because I think, unfortunately, you know, we could be, you know, this may not be the only time, you know, we're in this kind of situation.
No, and this may not end. I mean, there's no guarantee. We all want to believe and hope that there will be a vaccine, but there is no guarantee to that. So we shall see. Diana, thank you for taking the time to talk to us today. I greatly appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Hopefully we will be working on that stuff in the fall. My fingers are crossed. And
can't wait.
We will talk to you soon.
Okay. Thanks, Matt. Take care.
Bye now.
Yeah. Bye-bye.